Shows that make you laugh. Shows that make you think. Music that moves you. It could only be one place. Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed in these radio programs are those of the individual hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of Universal Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to the National Safe Child Show, addressing the health, safety, and welfare of all children nationwide, because it shouldn't hurt to be a child. Here is your host, Tammi Stefano.
Okay. Oops. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining the National Safe Child Show. As you know, every week for the past 3 years, we've just passed our 3-year anniversary, and we are covering issues that the mainstream media just doesn't want to cover. And these issues involve child safety, corruption, systemic failures within our child protective services, failures within our legal system, our judicial system. And folks, I can tell you in the 3 years that I have been on air, it unfortunately has not gotten better. And it's time to turn up the volume, okay? Because I can assure you, your number may come up. I had a case yesterday, family who's never been involved. They took their child to the doctor, to the hospital, because she had a little problem. CPS came in. I mean, we covered an issue last week. Mom has a baby, 2 days. She's still in the hospital. A day after she gave birth, CPS came in. Folks, this is scary. We speak about third world countries, but I'll tell you what, it's happening right here in the United States of America. And if you don't open your eyes, if you're ignorant to it, get online. Look at medicalkidnap.com. Follow National Safe Child Show. Go on YouTube. Just pull up the stories. Today, we have an amazing attorney that's on with us, okay? And we're going to hear how he came to have an understanding that was shocking to him. And it caused him to have to take on these issues. So without further ado, folks, thank you for joining us today. Do we have you, Mr. Joe Churchwell?
I think so.
Wonderful.
All right.
Attorney Churchwell, Joe Churchwell, he practices in the state of Arkansas. Joe, let's start out by allowing you to introduce yourself. Tell the audience how you got involved in the specific area of law that you're now practicing and where you started off, and introduce yourself. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I was really excited to meet you the other day. I think we're going to be able to do some good stuff.
I'm with
the specific area of law that I'm in right now, I guess, is I'm headed towards civil rights. When I first started practicing law about 11 years ago, I swore I would never do family law. Didn't want to get the late night calls on Christmas Eve and the morning calls on Thanksgiving where, he's not bringing the kids, she's not bringing the kids. I'd heard the nightmares. I swore off of that entire area, but one thing led to another. I partnered up with some folks and I ended up doing family law. And, 6-7 years into my practice, I had a good practice. Divorce law, custody law, guardianships. It got to the point that I could not take a divorce that had a contested custody matter without getting involved with CPS or DHS or the Arkansas State Police. It seemed that, I could say this, about half of my contested cases had that element in it where either one or the other parent or a family member of those parents would make a hotline call, which 9 times out of 10 would lead to an investigation, which 9 times out of 10 would lead to a true finding of abuse or neglect, one or the other. What that did was alienated one parent, and it was usually mine, from the child. If they were a state employee and there was a true finding and they were on the maltreatment registry, immediately lost their job. And it would turn a $2,500 average divorce case into $10,000 to $15,000 because we are appealing the true finding of the maltreatment registry. We are in circuit court, family law. We're also now in juvenile court, the dependent neglect case. And most of these people, the great majority, 99%, cannot afford to pay what it cost me to fight that. And I had a really hard time. Well, I've never done it. I can't dump the people just because they can't continue to pay the legal fees. So, on top of the anguish of seeing the children and the parents alienated from one another, the loss of the job, the constant, either in an administrative hearing or in juvenile court or in circuit court, it's really a nightmare for parents. And it got to be a nightmare for me because I wasn't making the living that I was used to making.
But you couldn't get out of it.
No, unfortunately, I have, I guess, a moral compass. I could not get out of it.
Right.
And, you can drop clients, you can fire clients, you can do motions to withdraw, but it's not the right thing to do.
Right.
So the right thing to do, I thought, was go to the powers that be. And I have a friend in the Arkansas Senate, was a friend of mine long before he became a senator, Alan Clark. And I had reached out to him the summer, actually, of 2015 and said, there's an issue here. I've got 4 families that I've represented. And between the 4 families here, I think I can show you what I see to be the problems with the child maltreatment investigations and with CPS. And he was always very receptive. One thing led to another. And in January of 2015, the Garland County Sheriffs and the Arkansas State Police brought a SWAT team out to Treasure Isle in Hot Springs and took custody of 7 of Hal Stanley's children. And Alan said that 1 to 2 calls a month on average would come in from a constituent. That had been his experience. I think he said
I
about
want to stop
200.
you for 1 second, Joe.
Sure.
Okay. I'm hearing feedback, so I don't know. It's a little bit of a lag, so hold that thought. Okay. Okay. Hold on. I think that we may have resolved the problem. Not sure. I'll let you know in a minute because I definitely do not want to not be able to clearly hear such an important. Okay, John, hopefully it's resolved now. Okay. All right, Joe, go ahead and continue, please.
Okay, how are we doing now?
No, I'm still. Okay, wait a minute. Okay. Does everybody still have good sound? Anybody who's on the chat roll, if you could just tell me if you can hear this clearly. Okay. Joe, go ahead. Please continue.
Okay. I think we were with Senator Clark saying that he would receive 1 to 2 calls a month from constituents about the issue that they were concerned with. When Hal's kids and Hal and Michelle Stanley's kids were taken actually the call was made to take the kids by Garland County Sheriff's Sergeant Mike Wright. However, the duty then fell to the Department of Human Services to actually take custody. When those kids were taken from Hal Stanley, the people that knew Hal and Michelle knew that this was wrong. I think Senator Clark said he got somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 calls. And that's been a while now. That might have been a week he got 200 calls. So, not in the normal of a politician, he took it upon himself to go investigate this himself. As a state senator, he has access to any documents or any information within any state agency upon request. And he went out and he got the information that was compiled by the state police investigators and everything that DHS had, and he went and talked to the people that they talked to. He talked to the family members of the Stanleys. He talked to the people that had made the reports. And I think he estimated putting in somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 hours, he thought, in this investigation. And he came to the conclusion that none of the true findings were warranted. The state police crimes against children division made 21 true findings of burning and poisoning and striking and bruising and educational neglects. 21 true findings. None of them were warranted according to the investigation that was done by Senator Clark.
You've got to be kidding me. So it was all bogus.
No.
When somebody on the outside asked some questions, took a look at what they considered evidence, which is often just hearsay, he found that it was bogus.
Every single charge was bogus.
21 charges, all of them bogus, Joe?
Yeah. So he went to the directors of the two agencies that were responsible. The Arkansas State Police happened to catch this investigation. And I'll kind of tell you the difference in the way that works in a little bit. But he went to the director of the Division of Children and Family Services, at that time, Captain Ron Staten. He's now a major. And he went to Cecile Brucker, who has since retired, but she was the head of, or the director of the Division of Children and Family Services in DHS. Okay. And he went to them and said, "This is not correct. This is not the intention of the legislature or the laws that were written under the Child Maltreatment Act. We need to figure out where these investigations are going wrong and fix it." And basically they said, "Look, that's the law, that's the system. There's really nothing we can do about it. And therefore we're not going to do anything about it." So what they didn't know is, at the time, I think, is that Senator Clark was the co-chair of the Joint Professional Review Committee. And that is it's a joint committee made up of the House and the Senate. And their job is to review the performance of state agencies. And it just so happened that the state police and DHS are both state agencies. So I think he went to the committee, told them what was going on, how urgent it was, and how devastating it can be to a family to be subject of one of these investigations, and how you cannot be guilty yet be instantly found guilty until you prove yourself innocent, which you can't if they don't want you to. And so they cleared the schedule of the Joint Professional Review Committee of those agencies that were to be reviewed and started bringing in DHS and the state police to answer for these policies and these customs that were devastating families. And that was, I think the first one was July 30th of 2015. It was at that time that I became involved with Hal's family. The dependent neglect portion of their tragedy had ended. In other words, the children had been returned home.
How long were they out of the home, out of their home, because of 21 bogus allegations from Child Protective Services that were found to be, in fact, bogus? How long were they away?
Approximately about 4 months. But when they went home, here's the other thing. When they went home, DHS said, look, this is just a visit for you. You don't have custody. We do. Your home is now a foster home. You are subject to our inspection with no notice 24 hours a day. And you will do as and raise these children as we say until they go back into your custody completely. So they had up to 20 hours a week. They had a social worker monitoring them while they were earning the right to actually have custody of their children again, rather than simply a visit. And I think that went on for about 2 months before that ended. And, these are our parents that home birthed 10 beautiful, happy, healthy children. And they're doing things such as taking parenting classes in ridiculous obligations that these departments, they call them services, of course, but, checking off boxes and clearing hurdles and jumping through hoops. A parent will do anything to get their child home.
Absolutely. And they know that just as much as you and I know that. They know that. And that's their strength. That's their strength.
Yeah, it is. And it's coercion in the purest form, in duress. Molly Tierney was the head of,
Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in Maryland.
The 10-minute TED Talk that she gave.
Fabulous.
Isn't it?
Fabulous. She says it all. Yeah. This is a business. She came to find it had nothing to do with protecting children at all, that she was just oiling a established machine, I think is what she said.
She did. She said, I was running a well-oiled machine, well-oiled and at taking people's children.
Yes.
And she hit the nail on the head. Foster care is the main intervention, yet foster care is the problem.
Yes.
And I think that's where these lawsuits that have been, everybody's all happy about the success of these lawsuits where these judges are finding that foster care is violating the constitutional rights of these children. The problem is they're not getting the relief that we need to get, which is we need to stop removing children from families where they don't need to be removed, which is about 90%. If you look at the statistics, at least here in Arkansas, about 10% of children that have been removed from their homes have been removed for physical abuse or sexual abuse. The great majority are being removed because of neglect. And a lot of times it's money that would fix these problems, the neglect. Yet instead of putting the money where it needs to go, which is to the families, we are pumping that money into what Molly called the child welfare industrial complex, which are the juvenile courts and the juvenile court staff and these experts that they bring in. Everybody's got to have counseling. Everybody's got to have a psychological evaluation.
That's right.
I wish CPS would be subject to the same psychological evaluations.
That's what I'm saying. Listen, then we'll find out who the real problems are. I mean, this isn't rocket science.
No, it's not. And they need to acknowledge that removing a child causes just as much trauma as 9 out of 10 of the removals as the neglect or the abuse that is taking place in the home. So now we've got a child that may be a victim of abuse or neglect at home, and now he's going to be a victim of the abuse and neglect that is a result of the state removing the child. So it's compounded exponentially. Excuse me, and I don't think some of these children are ever going to totally recover from it. I know that the children that Hal Stanley got back are not the same children that were taken. And I see it today. I see problems and issues that the children are still having because of the removal and the way that they were removed. It's really heartbreaking. And most people don't believe that it's taking place because most people don't come into contact with this.
That's right.
The poor and unsophisticated are the target, the majority at least.
That's right. I have a friend who I am going to introduce you to. His name is Robert Powell. He's an attorney up in Northern California. And Bob's been on, and what he says is, he's a very cool cat anyway. He says the black, the brown, the yellow, and the down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're appointed lawyers, if they're appointed a lawyer, who are also down because, at least in Arkansas, they don't fund parent counsel. They give all the money to the OCC, who are the lawyers that represent DHS and the state police. They give the money to the ad litems. They give the money to CASA. And in fiscal year 2015, the director of parent counsel, and we had 63 under contract, said that they didn't have enough money in their budget to subpoena a lay witness on behalf of the parents. Now, that costs $35 in Arkansas. Okay. Yet, on the other hand, if, as you were saying a little bit ago, you take your child to the hospital, they decide that there's abuse or neglect going on. They're going to take your child. You're going to go to court. You're going to have to rebut the testimony of those expert witnesses. And in several cases of mine, it was doctors. Of course, they are pediatric child abuse experts.
Specialists. This
specialist.
newfounded specialty has just, risen up after all of these years. Child abuse expert specialists, or specialists.
Right. Mm-hmm. Pediatric child abuse specialist. Yeah, yes. You know what happens when you're looking for something, right? You find it.
You bet.
And so you've got a parent that's faced with a court-appointed lawyer who does not have the funds to even subpoena a lay witness, yet you're going to try to rebut the testimony of these expert witnesses. And of course, they work for the state. I don't care if it's Children's Hospital or not. Arkansas Children's Hospital was paid in fiscal year 2015 $83 million in contracts by DHS alone. So,
okay, 2015, $83
million in contracts from Department of Human Services in Arkansas alone. Right.
Okay, wait a minute. Then I want to ask you something. When I heard you, because my speakers might be off here, that you said that this department, $83 million, 1 year, 2015, couldn't afford to pay a $35 fee. Did I miss something?
No. Well, what I'm saying is that the parent counsel who are responsible, there's an office of parent counsel. Okay. And right now they're actually just starting to admit that there is a conflict of interest the way the courts are set up as far as parent counsel. The administrative office of the courts is housed within the Supreme Court building of the Supreme Court of Arkansas. The administrative office of the courts oversees all of the juvenile judges. They oversee the ad litems who represent the children. They oversee the parent counsel that are under contract. Most are part-time, under contract, that represent the parents, indigent parents. They also oversee CASA, the court-appointed special advocates. That's one agency that oversees all of them. They're responsible for deciding the budgets or for requesting the budgets from the legislature. Okay? So what I'm saying is that they direct the great majority of their money to the ad litems that represent the children, to CASA, to the juvenile judges to run their courtrooms, and they did not allot enough money for the parent counsel to have money in their budget to even subpoena a lay witness on behalf of a parent, their client. And like I said, that's $35.
$35.
The Department of Human Services has enough money in their budget to pay Children's Hospital $83 million in contracts during the same year. Now, some people will say, well, a lot of that's Medicaid, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, it is, but Medicaid is what pays these extensive workups that a child that goes into care gets. They'll send that child to UAMS. I'm looking at a workup right now on one of Hal Stanley's kids. It's 1.5 inches thick, head to toe, plus pace. And they do that for all the kids that are taken into care. Well, they're greasing the wheels at Children's Hospital. Who do you think they're going to testify for?
That's right.
There is, right. And is there any incentive for them to say this is not abuse? Because if it's not abuse, they're not going to come into their hospital to make that $83 million in contracts. When there is abuse, that kid's going to keep coming back and they're going to keep getting paid.
So would it be fair to say, as Molly stated, as you're stating right now, Joe Churchwell, that if the kids go home and things are okay, Child Protective Services could potentially go out of business.
Yes.
The only way that they stay in business is if they ensure that children are taken away from their parents, from their families.
Yes, and the only way that all of these counselors stay in business. The child welfare industrial complex is made up of many, many different livelihoods and professions, and they all depend on that child being in care, and I hate that term. I hate the term in the child's best interest.
It's anything but
in
care.
Right. Yeah. It's, you can't tell me that a parent, even if they're struggling or even if they're having some problems, that a parent does not know more what is better for a child than a stranger. Okay. Just because they're an ad litem and just because they can parrot that term, in the child's best interest, doesn't mean they know what's in that child's best interest. I wish they would. In the legislature right now in Arkansas, they have a point. They said we have to be able to define what that is because we don't think the judges are always doing what's in the child's best interest, and we know others aren't. Well, you can't define it. You need to just do away with the whole idea that an industry can do what's in a child's best interest when that industry depends on that child being in the custody of the state and not in the custody of the parent.
That's right.
Okay. There should be a law that says there's a presumption that a parent is going to act in the best interest of their child. And if that presumption is not outweighed by clear and convincing evidence, then you got to leave them alone. You've got to obey what the Constitution says. There's a hierarchy of laws. There's a hierarchy of right and wrong. And just because you come in and you have a moniker that I'm an ad litem and I know what's in the child's best interest, or I'm a judge and I must do what's in the child's best interest, that doesn't make it so, and it doesn't trump the Constitution.
No, it certainly doesn't. But what I've seen over and over, hundreds of cases and attorneys that have told me the same thing, and we're all in agreement, they're not following. They are, let me restate this. They are violating in such a gross manner the constitutional and civil liberties of these parents and their ability to be able to parent their own children, make decisions for their children, whether it's medical, religious, educational. They strip them, and it almost, God forgive me if I'm wrong, but the proof is in the pudding. It seems like several of these deviant type of social workers enjoy it. They enjoy this God power trip that they're on. They go out of their way to make these parents suffer, parents that are doing everything to try to cooperate with the department's multitude of ridiculous requests in order to prove that they're a good parent, only to find later every single allegation is bogus. 21 for this particular horrific case in Arkansas, in which the state that you practice in. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
It just upsets me to no end. These people are being violated here. There's no more freedom. This is of the free. No. You and your family will be taken prisoner. You might not have physical handcuffs on, but I can assure you the shackles are on the feet of both the children and the parents and the families. I'll tell you, Joe, I've worked with parents that are not here today with us because they've taken their lives. Okay? That's real. They've taken their lives.
I'm having a really, really hard time hearing you. You're cutting out
I'm
what
sorry.
I've got through the phone. Hey, let's not forget, though, children also have constitutional rights. Rights of the parents to have children and raise a family and educate, bring them up the way they want to be, according to their conscience is one thing. The children also have constitutional right to be raised by their parents. and to belong to that family. There's a right of association. That's the First Amendment. The Fifth Amendment, nor be deprived of life, liberty, property without process. Well, you're depriving them with their family, and that is liberty. The Fourth Amendment, every single CPS nationwide violates the Fourth Amendment when they enter a home without a warrant. Okay, every single department across the United States violates the Fourth Amendment when they use that child for these interrogations. Okay, the 14th Amendment, the 10th Amendment. I could keep going on and on. The First Amendment, gag orders. You can't talk to children about the case. You can't talk to them about the case. Constitution absolutely just out the window whenever it comes to child protection. And I think people are get the point.
Okay, Joe, wait a minute. Your voice is cutting in and out. I don't know. I'm looking. I don't know if you're looking at the chat roll there. Your voice is cutting in and out.
Yeah, and yours, I hear about every other word.
Okay. So, did you move?
No.
Let me hear you now.
Okay. Am I
Yeah,
cutting out now?
No, you sound great now. Folks,
Okay, and I
let me
can hear
know
you
in the
now,
chat
too.
room if do I sound okay now?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. All right. We missed some of what you were saying. We thought maybe it was on our end, only to determine it was actually on yours. Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Back on the air.
Okay. Well, you sound great now.
Oh, you do as well. Okay. Wonderful.
All right.
We're back in business. I need for you, I'm so sorry, man, but I need for you to repeat verbatim. I'm just joking. But I do need for you to explain what you were just hold on. What we're just explaining because wait a minute. Okay. So please go over what you were just explaining to the audience about the violations of the Fourth Amendment and the Fourth Amendment. And
Oh, yeah.
please, you kind of were choppy. You were breaking up.
The policies and protocols and the customs of these social workers, you want to call them that, investigators, child protective services, everything they do violates the civil rights of the children and the parents. And people talk a lot about, or they're starting to talk a lot about, how the investigations and the removals of children violate parents' constitutional and their civil right to raise their children. And that's true. But what you don't hear about is the violation of the children's civil rights. Now, I've heard a lot recently, especially in Texas. Jack issued a 160-page opinion about how the children's constitutional rights, civil rights violated while in foster care, because the foster care was not protecting, foster care wasn't taking care of it. But what we're not seeing at all is the fact that when CPS comes to your house and they come through without a warrant, they get to the front door, they violated the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers in effect, against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. That's a really simple premise. Okay?
That's right.
Unreasonable search and seizure per se happens when they don't have a warrant. They never have a warrant. Okay. Then you go to the next step. No warrant, no issue, but a probable cause, supported by their affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Okay, they never do that. I had last year the deputy director of the Department of Human Services tell me in an email, which would be Exhibit 1 to my federal lawsuit on for the Stanleys.
Good.
We have a requirement to follow the amendment, she said. Okay?
Wow.
There's a statute that parent says, no, you can't come in. You cannot see my child. There's a statute in Arkansas, 9/1809, that says that worker may get an ex parte order of investigation. Okay. That doesn't happen very often. And, I can tell you that it's not the first one. It's certainly one of those. I filed a lawsuit last Monday, asking the judge that issued it to declare that statute and several other statutes unconstitutional under the Arkansas Child Maltreatment Act. I brought the state of Arkansas into the necessary third party. I've served the Attorney General. I'm waiting for their response now. I do not expect the trial court to declare the code unconstitutional. I don't honestly expect the Arkansas Supreme Court to do so either. So one way or another, we're probably headed to the Circuit Court of Appeals. I think at some point somebody will, because it is unconstitutional. The other federal circuits that have addressed the issue have found that the First Amendment and the 14th Amendment absolutely apply to child services in the aspect of child abuse investigation. We're just kind of lagging. We're kind of late coming to the party as far as Arkansas is concerned. But the children have a right to maintain a relationship with the family. It's called association. That's the right that's under the First Amendment. The government cannot prohibit the free exercise of religion or speech or association. Okay?
Well, they're not supposed to.
They cannot do it without violating a person's civil rights. They can't. No, they're not supposed to. But they cannot. It can happen without civil rights. Now, whether there's a remedy for that, you find a lawyer, you've got to get to the court, you've got to make the case correctly. Sure they can. They do today.
Right.
Garland County, just last few days, the Garland County Sheriff's Department, Arkansas State Police, the Springs City Police Department, they do Arkansas Fish and Game in. All of these enforcement agencies have been setting up roadblocks, stopping everybody that comes through, taking license, registrations, checking alcohol, canines, sniffing the cars. It's the blatantly unconstitutional thing I've ever seen. And they've done it for 3 days. And, I talked to the county attorney by text this morning. He's hiking in the mountains. I asked him if he knew this was happening, and he said no. I asked another prosecutor, a friend of mine this morning, that is a prosecutor in Garland County. I asked if he knew it was happening. He said no. It was all over Facebook. Yeah. And here's the scary thing. By and large, the public is applauding it.
You've got to be kidding.
Oh, no. There were, when I looked last, 109 comments, and I'd say 100 were positive. Good, we're getting criminals off the streets. To the point that they were sending paddy wagons from Garland County Jail to pick people up at these stops. And it's absolutely unconstitutional.
Joe, my take is what I'm seeing is I feel like our nation is in some type of a drunken stupor. Nobody knows what is going on right in their communities. People are applauding something like this. They realize their number might come up, that they might be part of the victimization soon to happen, or they might be driving that way. Are they aware?
They think they're not going to come. It's all that I think of.
This is
The
ignorance.
law, it is ignorant. You know, the law, I set a post this morning and I put a to the Supreme Court case, one of them, that you cannot have a roadblock for law enforcement purposes. You know, a specialized roadblock just for DW, that's constitutional. But, I mean, they're just stopping people, you know, middle of the day, and there's no distinct aspect of this stop that makes it a instant or a special need to do so. And it's blatant. And nobody, well, there are a few that are upset. I was looking at my Facebook a minute, and there are a few people that are yeah, hey, it isn't right, you know. But the Supreme Court said it's not. I don't know if it's the Stone Ford mentality, you know,
Right.
that it's a numbers game, and it's, you know, it's probably cheaper to pay 2 or 3 wrongful death lawsuits than it is to fix the rollover problem or do a recall. So it's a numbers game. You know, they've made, I don't know, 100 and some odd arrests here, and, you know, nobody probably is going to end up with the money to hire a lawyer or challenge the civil rights aspect of it in federal court, and very few of them probably will be successful in suppressing any evidence that's found, because you pretty much in this county have to get to the appellate court level before you get a fair shake on that too. So I don't think that the powers that be care that they're violating the Constitution.
You said something to me when we spoke earlier this week. You said, and let me just ask you, do you believe that when you walk into these courtrooms and you see the egregious situations and you have an opportunity to actually know what's really going on, do you think that the powers to be, the powers that are before you, that they know what's going on? You know, you said it's like a drug. Do you remember?
I do. It goes, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything that I've said and all of my ideas are out there before. And Molly Tierney is that 10-minute TED Talk. She says it, and that's where I got it, is that the caseworkers actually believe they're helping children. And when they do help a child, it feels good. And it's like a drug. And they want that again and again and again. Okay, and they get it when they remove a child from a home, from a bad home. But then they get to the point to where just removing that child, well, you know, it's a numbers game there too. They've removed that child from what they think is a potentially harmful situation. They've got that high, that happened, now they move on to the next one. They're not addressing or not recognizing the fact that the removal itself is traumatic on the child. Okay, and if that child's being removed from a home that he shouldn't be removed from, that's the only trauma that child is experiencing, and it's an absolute travesty of justice if the only trauma the child is experiencing is a result of the CPS or DHS removing them from their family. And that happens more often than not. Well, okay,
and let's not talk about, well, no, absolutely, 6 times more often. That's what the research shows. And let's not get into the fact that more children die when they are in the protection, quote unquote, of an agency.
Yeah, that we know about. I mean, there are children that hit the system you never see again, and we never hear about it. Those are just the ones that are in foster. Right.
Right. That's right.
You know. Yeah. No, the powers that be, they. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Do you think that the system, we know it's broken, can it be repaired, or as many other? No, well, I don't even have to finish. You already know the answer. Cannot
Absolutely
be repaired.
Not. No. The intervention is the problem. Okay? We've got federal money in the billions coming down out of Social Security, Title 4E, 4D, that the only way the state gets that money is if the child's in foster care. The Safe Families Act, thank you, Mrs. Clinton. The only way the state gets the money is if the child is adopted. The only way the child is adopted is if the parental rights are terminated. So we're severing bloodlines. We're destroying generational between people. We're doing it as fast as we can do it.
Joe.
And it's, yeah.
Right here, right now, what is the first course of action, according to you, that can start this process of abolishing a clearly broken and corrupt system. What can you recommend to your colleagues? Go ahead.
No, it's got to happen on Capitol Hill. You got to stop the federal incentives. Okay, stop the federal incentive of putting the child in foster care. I'm not saying stop the money coming from the states, but the states need to have the ability and the desire to give that money to the families, directly to the families, to help offset or to help prevent or help fix the neglect that's happening in there. Now, money is not going to fix abuse. And there are bad people out there. There are bad parents that, believe it or not, can physically and sexually abuse their own children. You're not ever going to fix that, okay? But here's the other side. That's a crime, okay? That's not for a social worker to stick their nose in. That's a crime that needs to be investigated by police. Police have to follow the Fourth Amendment and other amendments. They have to do it constitutionally. And then you put those bastards in jail. Or you kill them regardless, okay? Mm-hmm. That's not social work, okay?
That's right.
Social work are the families that their lights get turned off. They might not have hot water. They don't have enough food. They've got bed bugs. They can't afford a new bed. Those things can be fixed by directly putting that money from the federal government through the state and into the family, not to counselors, not to foster parents, not to probation officers in the juvenile court, not to ad litems, not to administrative offices of the courts, not to adoption agencies. Okay? Yes. Here's another thing. Get on and look at the assets of these nonprofit adoption agencies. Okay? They've got millions of dollars worth of property and assets. Okay? They're really not profit. All they've got to do to realize a profit from that is to just disband it and cut it up. But that's another show. Put the money where it belongs, is in the hands of the families, and not in a foster care and not in adoption. And the only way to do that is stop that incentive. If the state has an incentive to fix families, they will. Right now, the states have an incentive to destroy families.
Right.
And
that's
the first step. There's another first step that has to go right alongside of that, and that's for lawyers to get enough guts to start making these people follow the Constitution. If they would follow the Constitution, they're not going to get in your house. It's unconstitutional also to go to the school or these other public facilities that by law, a social worker is allowed to go straight to the school, take your child, and interrogate them without any notice or consent of the parent, if that parent is the alleged offender. Okay? And all
Which is crazy.
It is. The forefathers know that is a violation. They knew it when they drafted the Constitution. The people that are doing it today know it. We sat up here on the Hill in Arkansas and had DHS attorneys straight-faced lying to the legislators in these committees saying that it's not unconstitutional. And they know it is. It's absolutely unconstitutional. And a recent case actually out of New York was won on a summary judgment. And the judge found, and he cited many other circuits as well, the judge found that taking that child out of class without notice or consent of the parent and interrogating them was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. That was an unreasonable seizure of the child. The same case, the social workers and the investigators went to the parent's home and coerced their way in, telling them they had a right to come in and that they had to let them come in, and interviewed the parents and looked around the house. Same judge found that also was a violation of the Fourth Amendment as an unreasonable search.
Really?
Believe it or not, yeah. And that's as far as the investigation went. Okay, they talked to the child at school. They went to the home. Thankfully, they realized there was nothing wrong, and they closed the investigation right there. Well, the parent sued and got $250,000 for the violation of the Fourth Amendment on the child as in seizure and the home as in coercing and forcing their way in. And believe it or not, the state did not appeal that. So
really, because they recognized, they knew. Let's not make this any more public. Sweep it under the rug, pay what we have to pay, because heck, we've got more than enough money. This is a cup of coffee. in comparison.
But they don't very often do that.
No, they
your
don't.
friend Sean McMillan, won the case in Orange County. Well, the majority of those fees in that $10 million in that area of judgment was on attorney's fees that were appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed. They didn't only appeal the finding that they had violated the Constitution, they appealed the attorney's fees. I mean, right to the very end. And so I was really surprised that wasn't appealed in New York. But I'm pleased.
Yeah, I'm pleased too. With that case, the social worker told Dan Fogarty, "You submit to me, or you lose your children. Submit.
You'll never see your children again if you don't submit." Yeah, that's what I call contempt of social worker. On the street, the police officer has all the juice, all the power. If he tells you to do something, you better do it, or you're more than likely going to go to jail because you have offended them. You have not submitted to that authority that they know they have. Well, the social workers have the same thing, and if you run awry of their contempt, they can and will many times say anything. And now I'm not talking about the average social worker. I have a lot of friends that work for the Department of Human Services here in Arkansas. I have cell phones of many of the people on the front lines, and they do want to do and will most times do the right thing. But there are those out there that have that personality, that flaw, and they know that the judge is going to believe them. Anything they say on that stand, the parent is not going to be able to rebut that. The judge is not going to believe a parent over the social worker. And there are exceptions.
Absolutely.
Okay. But I'm talking about the rank and file juvenile, rank and file investigator, rank and file juvenile judge. The conflicts and the collusion and the relationships within at least Arkansas's juvenile court system is absolutely naked conflict. One of our Supreme Court justices just the other day in a judiciary committee hearing finally admitted that there appears to be a conflict between the juvenile judges and the parent council. And it's like I explained a minute ago, they're all under the control of the Administrative Office of the Courts. And more specifically, they're under the control of one person, Connie Hickman Tanner. And I've described how some are better funded than others. Well, Supreme Court Justice Rhonda Wood has stated before on the record that this has been analyzed and there is no conflict. Well, finally, just last Tuesday, I believe, she said, I think the perception is not accurate, but it happens to be a perception. So I think we need to address the consequences, she says. So in other words, she still doesn't believe there's a conflict.
Okay.
Yet, because the people think that there's a conflict, we have to do something about it. Now, her suggestion was that the Supreme Court, who is actually in control of this now, choose an independent panel to supervise, whatever that means, the administrative office. But, if the Supreme Court is already technically in control, and they are, the Chief Justice chooses the person that's position is now Connie Tanner's.
Okay.
They're going to choose the panel that's going to oversee it. It makes no sense. Senator Hutchinson suggested that, that the governor and the legislature and the judiciary all choose a panel and make it a permanent oversight panel. Now, that makes sense. All three branches of the government, choose some of the members. But the Supreme Court is going to look into it, as she says, to see if they have the jurisdiction or the power to do it. Okay. So I guess that means the Supreme Court is going to decide what its own power is. And she said that they're going to do it quickly to preempt the legislation that's coming up. Well, we've got a legislative session coming up in 2017. I don't see why the urgency now to choose this panel of oversight is. I fully.
It always works that way.
Yeah,
they want to look good.
Well, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But
no.
It's just like in California. Gabriel Fernandez dies. He's beaten. The department was called 69 times. They did drive-bys, didn't give a crap about this poor, beautiful boy. As a result, he was killed by his mother and mom's boyfriend. What do? Everybody starts going into a frenzy, and they have a blue ribbon commission. And that takes, I don't know how long. And then the Blue Ribbon Commission makes recommendations. By the time that they make the recommendations, and the Board of Supervisors here that oversees the department gets all of that, organized, people have started to forget. Media's not covering it like they, there's other news to cover. I'm not blaming mainstream media. Social media certainly continue to cover it because the little boy was used for target practice. He had bullets, BB bullets, in his lungs, okay? Burned from neck to foot, sodomized, just broken bones, teeth out, crushed skull, you name it. And this didn't happen in one sitting, Joe. This was through the course of months. The teacher kept calling. Everybody knew but the department. And finally, on May 24th, thank God, he breathed his last breath, because I can't imagine that child at 8 years old, by the way, endured more torture than people that are fighting a war. I mean, I don't know how he did it. I just love this kid. They then come up with the Blue Ribbon Committee. Everybody goes into a frenzy, and they say that they're going to fix the problem when something horrific happens, and then it goes away and nothing gets done. Seems like it's going to. Everybody goes, whew, well, they'll take care of that. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing, and as a matter of fact, it's worse, because now they've covered up another area.
The problem with the action that's taken usually is the fact that these oversight committees a lot of times are not carried through, or that not made permanent, or the members of the committees are legislators. We have term limits here in Arkansas, and a lot of people say that term limits are good because you don't get somebody in there and they don't stay in that position of power so long and they can't abuse their power. But on the flip side, a bureaucrat is not term limited. So if you've got somebody in a position of power in one of these departments and they are systematically violating civil rights, which has happened within Child Protective Services, or that there is a custom or policy that has developed because of these directors, which in this case violates the constitutional rights of children and their parents, these bureaucrats stay in office, and a legislator that is part of an oversight committee, or a legislator that has introduced and passed legislation to oversee or put checks and balances into place, has either term limited out, or someone else has been elected to his position. They come and go. A lot of times the bureaucrat will not. They'll move from place to place, but yet they remain in the bureaucracy. For that reason, I don't agree with term limits. If you've got somebody that's a good job and they're actually there fulfilling civic duty, they need to stay. And the term limits themselves are not fulfilling the purpose that the people out here think they are. I don't know. It's heartbreaking. It is what it is.
You get cards. You get cards from kids of families from the children that have been returned to their family. This is where. Yeah. And you said that's worth more than any amount that you've received in the past. This is touching your conscience in ways you said that it's indescribable.
It is. And here's the thing: I'm not these kids ad litem. Right. These kids had a lawyer that was supposed to be protecting them and supposed to be working for them. I was the parents. I was the bad guy's lawyer. But by not giving up and by fighting, sometimes I'm able to help get a family back together. And the kids see that, and that's where the kids want to be. They want to be with their family. And they usually deserve to be with their family. And there are instances, more than I can believe, or more.
God bless you.
But they shouldn't have ever been taken away. And the agency, they will not admit that they made a mistake, and they will fight tooth and nail to the end to keep from having to say, we made a mistake. I've got a case right now. Mary's familiar with it. You're familiar with it.
Yes.
Her name's Jessica Hill. She's facing a Class Y felony for assault on her infant. She was 2 months old, for what we all know is junk science, shaken baby syndrome. Okay, she's facing 10 to 40 to life. Her infant was taken away from her by a pediatric child abuse specialist at Arkansas Children's Hospital, who made a diagnosis of abuse based upon some diagnoses of 3 other doctors. They said the child, and here's the thing, Jessica and Troy, the mother and father, took the child to their pediatrician the day before and said, she's fussy, she's spitting up. It just so happened that the child had just received a whole bunch of vaccinations, about 150 times the amount of heavy metals that are recommended, or that are danger level for an adult. Okay, the 2-month-old. She was spitting up. She was fussy. The pediatrician looked at her. Their family said, she may have a virus. I don't see anything majorly wrong. Take her home. She was still fussy. They took her to Arkansas Children's Hospital. Arkansas Children's Hospital did hundreds of x-rays on the child, which in and of itself is dangerous in the amount of radiation. Bone scan, CT scan. They said, this is abuse. Although there were no outward signs of any head trauma, no bruising, no abrasions, no contusions, no. They said that the child has subdural hematoma, which is a brain bleed. They said the child has retinal hemorrhaging. And on those 2 diagnoses alone, they said that this is abuse. They took the child away at 2 months. 287 days later, with only having an hour a week supervised visitation with not only this 2-month-old infant at the time, they took their 5-year-old daughter out of their custody as well because of a, quote, risk of harm, end quote. 287 days, she gets an hour a week supervised visitation with these kids.
1 hour a week. How old are the kids?
Well, the infant was 2 months old when they took her from the care, and Jemiah was 5 years old. So Jemiah had her 6th birthday in a foster parent home. And actually, we found out later that the infant that was 2 months old was in 5 different placements with 5 different foster parents during the time that she was out. And I'm probably saying more than I should be saying. I promise you, I'm saying more than the department and the state wants me to say.
Yeah.
However, the DHS case is closed. The night before the case was closed, check this out. I get a call from Douglas Smith, Dr. who agreed to help because I think she wore him down. She sent so many emails begging for help and telling her story over and over and over again. It's hard to get help without money. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Dr. Smith stepped up to the plate. He called me the night before we were going to court on her case. And the judge even said he had planned to order a termination of parental rights the next day. Did so in court. However, the night before, he calls and says, hey, the retinal hemorrhage diagnosis was made by a resident. Okay. He was starting, I think, his 13th month of residency. He was not an ophthalmologist yet. He said the diagnosis was not signed off on by an attending physician or faculty. He said, so I called the department, and guess what? He talked to the ophthalmologist, who told him, yeah, I don't know why my notes are not in the record. I remember this case. I remember seeing the pictures. and I'll come back to that in a second. She said there's not retinal hemorrhaging at all in one eye, and what he sees in the other eye is a cotton burst or something to that effect. And that does not support abuse. She said the evidence in this case is not supportive of abuse. Okay. That's what she tells the expert. So I'm getting this information the day before we go to court on her case. File an emergency. It's too late to subpoena a witness. I have to give a witness 48 hours notice to show up at a hearing.
Right.
So I filed an emergency motion asking this juvenile judge to order Dr. Peel, who is the pediatric child abuse specialist that said there's no doubt in her mind that there's the result of abuse, and the ophthalmologist who did not sign off on the resident's diagnosis of retinal hemorrhaging, to come to the hearing the next day so that I could get them to explain that at least one piece of the puzzle was a misdiagnosis. Okay, the judge denied that motion.
Any interest? I mean, you're showing the court these are facts. Did they have any interest in hearing the truth?
Absolutely not. And not was he not interested in hearing the truth. He denied the order so that the truth could not be heard. Okay? Just so happened when I got that call from Dr. Smith, a representative that is a member of this committee, the Joint Professional Review Committee, that has been investigating DHS and the state police, just so happened he was in my office. He was counseling me on money matters, trying to help me stay in business so I could keep helping people. And I got a call and I said, I've got to stop what I'm doing and draft this motion. Okay. And I thought about it, and I had a feeling that the judge was not going to grant this motion, wouldn't be there. So I asked Representative Gates if he would accompany me to that hearing and observe in his official capacity. And he agreed to do so.
Okay.
And he was there. But I'll kind of cut to the chase. The judge went through and he said, I don't care if there's not retinal hemorrhaging. He said, there's enough evidence in this case that I can find abuse. And I do find abuse. And then we got to the end, and these children had finally been put into the custody of Jessica Toy's mother. But they had to become foster parents. It's a kicker. You know, we're going to do relative placement in this state, even though it's a requirement. Under 42 U.S.C. 5106, you have to give a preference to a relative caretaker.
Absolutely.
In fact, you even have to give a preference to fictive kin. But we don't do that here. We ignore family placement because, you know, the nut doesn't fall too far from the tree usually. And if those grandparents were really fit to have these kids, well, then their children wouldn't have been neglecting and abusing these kids. You know, but really what it comes down to, if you will become a foster parent or a provisional foster parent, then we'll let you have the kids. Well, when that happens, you see the state still gets the money. Then we still, you know, we have fulfilled that requirement of care so that the federal money keeps flowing. And
as long as the money's flowing, they don't mind if your family, if these kids remain within your family, as long as the money is, as long as the money is coming in. And in order for the money to come in, you must sign up, take classes, do fingerprinting, or do whatever they require in order for them to be able to put your name down as a foster care provider. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. But let me go back to Jessica's case a little bit here.
Please. Jessica might call in. I want to let you know, Joe.
That would be awesome. We'd love to hear from her. You know, her parents not only had to become provisional foster parents to get these kids out of strangers' homes, they also had to hire their own attorney. Okay? This family couldn't afford what they went through. They're still...
What family can? What family can?
None.
No.
The ones that can afford to do it never really get into the system. You know, because if a family that's affluent enough to call me and hire me and pay me for $10,000 on the front end, we're going to have enough of a case ready to go that it's not going to be in that juvenile court very long if it is there.
Well, I can tell you that might be in Arkansas, but I can tell you a client that I had, we just won the case not too long ago, $300,000 later. Okay.
Wow.
She said, I'm going to call Sean now, and I'm ready to sue the department. We're talking educated woman, has her stuff together. If you look on Medical Kidnap, you will see a dear woman who I just love and adore, Dr. Susan Spell, Harvard grad. Harvard grad. Yeah, you saw that.
I saw that, yeah. That's not the average, for sure.
No, not, but it's starting to be. They're starting to say, hey, why not? We've got the power.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know.
So go ahead.
That's the dangerous. Yeah, that's the danger of not checking these people and not, sticking your neck out to hold them accountable.
That's right.
But so we get to court the next day. The judge denies my motion. He's not going to order these doctors, who are the state witnesses, by the way, not my witnesses, to come explain, how they can say that there's retinal hemorrhaging when there's really not. He doesn't believe it because, of course, I don't have evidence. Well, no, I don't have evidence. But bring their witnesses in, and I will have either that or I'll have perjury, But they're not going to take that chance. Not going to take that chance. So what he ultimately ended up doing was dismissing the case and giving permanent custody to Jessica's mother, which is fine with me. I have no problem as long as my client's parental rights are not terminated. Okay.
Right.
So her parental rights are left intact. When we get finished with the criminal aspect of this, and that's gone, we will go back to a circuit court, a real court, file a motion to change custody back to the parents where it belongs.
Right.
So looking at, they're going to be years into this battle before it turns out correctly. But right as it stands right now, not much of a win, but a win is a win in DHS. Before the juvenile court. But we're still facing 10 to 40 to life.
I'm going to tell you,
junk science.
I've become very close to a gentleman in Louisiana, Gerald Price. He wrote the book, folks, if you haven't read it, The Darker Side of Justice by Gerald Price. He wrote it because his daughter right now, Joe, is in prison. They gave her 30 years hard labor. You're talking about a church-going. Gerald has been driving for the church and has been part of the ministry for 40 years, 30 years. This family is loved by everybody except the corrupt district attorney that needed somebody when these bogus allegations, it is, you got to read the book. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. 30 years hard labor. The girl never even had so much as a ticket. You're talking about a church girl. To date, it's unbelievable. It went to the appellate court. They reduced it. The judge said, the judge actually says in criminal court, I was really feeding into the frenzy, the media frenzy, so I'm going to take 20 years of hard labor off, but I still got to give her 10 years, even though there's not a damn bit of evidence to show that she did it. And as a matter of fact, they suppressed all of the evidence that showed that she was innocent. She's still in prison. So I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
This is real. It's not, this is not unheard of.
No, a judge in Texas recently stayed the execution of a man that was facing the death penalty for shaken baby syndrome. And in his ruling, he said this is junk science. And it is. It's junk science. There have been study after study done. The old one, they strapped a rhesus monkey to a sled and figured out that it takes 9 Gs of force to cause retinal hemorrhaging. Okay. Then they did studies after that with analogs, baby pigs, baby sheep, gave them to full-grown men and told them to shake them as hard as they could. Not one could ever produce retinal hemorrhaging or subdural hematoma. And what was happening was neck injuries. Okay. Well, that's a no-brainer. The weak point on an infant's body. If there's not a skeletal injury, you're not going to have subdural hematoma or retinal hemorrhaging. And you cannot tell me that these doctors are not smart enough to know that. So the only conclusion that I can come to is that it's intentional what they're doing. And they intentionally, like you said, suppress evidence. We never even got the photographs of the eyes. I sat personally in Arkansas Children's Hospital for 4 hours one day in records to make sure that they had given me everything that we were entitled to. And we never found those pictures of the eyes until Dr. Smith knew who to call and went directly to the department before those ever showed up. So they will suppress exculpatory evidence.
How far are you willing to go, Joe? How
All the
far are
way.
you? All the way. I mean,
As far
you
as
and
I need to go.
as far as you need to go to get the job done, to bring truth and justice to these parents.
Hello?
Is there anything that you would like the people to support you with? Give us your website. If you have a website, give us your website. Do you have I know a lot of these folks, they don't have any money. Do you have a donation site set up?
No.
Okay.
No. We're exploring
Different
a
options.
nonprofit legal fund, or maybe even a nonprofit law firm, but it's very, very tricky. I am myself an S corp. Churchwell Law Offices is a for-profit corporation.
I got you. Hold on 1 minute, Joe. Jessica, are you on the line with us?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Hello, how are y'all?
Welcome to the National Safe Child Show, dear. Boy, oh
Thank
boy, your number came up, unfortunately, and I'm sorry. I am sorry. We are living in a very, very egregious time when it comes to parenting.
Yes, I can agree to that.
Let me say, Tammi.
Go ahead.
This is a mother that would not give up, and had she not continued to bug these experts, she would still not have those children home, and they would have terminated her parental rights by now. She won this case on her own by just simply not giving up until she found the right people that could help her, because there is not any agency, there's not any organization, there's not any individual. I have a lot of friends that are doctors. Every single one of them talked to every single doctor they knew. They went to churches where these doctors go and pray, and we could not get one volunteer to help us in this state. And if it were not for Jessica to simply refuse to give up, and she was called and looked down upon and berated by these judges and these social workers, worse than garbage, and she had the guts to face it and keep asking for help until she found it. And that's you don't see that. And
no, you
not
don't.
A bad mother.
No,
that's not a mother that deserves to have her children taken away from her.
No, it's not,
but
Joe.
will they ever admit that? No, they will not ever admit it. But we know it, and we know it's true.
Jessica, we really honor you, honey. We see a lot of parents, and you know what? They are not giving up. They refuse. These are their children, and I've heard it over and over again. Until I breathe my last breath, I will continue to fight. What would you say to the parents, Jessica, who are just starting the battle that you now have a lot of experience with? What would you tell them?
Don't give up, and it's not easy, and you have to have a lot of support, and there's many things I can say to do, but a lot of people are wanting to give it up because of the way the system is. It's so corrupt, and there's not a lot of individuals out here that can afford the means to be able to have an attorney or a medical expert, or just continue the ropes that DHS makes you jump through.
Sure.
Yeah, so just don't give up is all I can say. Keep your head up. It's a very hard road to be on as you're living it.
You have your babies with you, correct?
I do. They were given full custody for my mother, but I am allowed to see them and be in their lives, so that's good enough for me as right now.
How many are you still on supervised? Do you have X amount of hours that you still
No.
are?
Oh, no.
It's unlimited.
No, she can see 'em.
Unlimited
All she
time.
wants with her mother. Yeah.
Excellent. When that day came, Jessica, how long had it been that you were fighting what seemed to be an army of bad people? How long were you fighting this?
9-10 months. I'm still currently in the midst of fighting it. Not over with yet.
Right.
But,
9 or 10 months that your children were bounced around to foster homes. Your youngest started at 2 months old, correct?
Correct.
Honey, I am so sorry. How is your relationship now? Do you think that the department who stripped you of your ability to parent your children, placed your children with strangers, do you think that you have the same relationship with your baby and that you would have had hadn't they come in like a Gestapo and made up this bogus or colluded with these so-called specialists? How's your relationship now? Has it been tarnished?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, we will never get back any of the holidays, any of the birthdays, all of that is, we'll never get that back. But what we do have is now, and my 6-year-old, she's definitely been harmed by all of this. She doesn't understand.
Does she understand what happened yet?
Not quite. Not really. She's fearful. I mean,
fearful of fearful of I always say we used to bring our children up to say trust social workers, trust the policeman, trust the judge. We can't say that anymore. Would you agree?
No, everything. She needs to know everything. She is the child that if you're on the phone, she has to know exactly who you're talking to, what about there's no secrets. She has to know what's going on.
She can't, because she's been down the road where when she didn't know what was going on, she suddenly lost mommy.
Yeah. She I feel like she in some way felt betrayal.
Of course.
Her parent couldn't just go get her when, your parents are supposed to save you and do this and that for you, and we couldn't. We had to abide by rules.
And at 6 years old, who can understand that? 6-year-olds it's so hard for them to understand. There's another situation where the little girl, 7 years old, she said, I thought you were a super mom. I thought you were a super mom. You can't say. We shatter these children's perception of their parents. Ask any child, their mom, their dads, they are super moms. They're superheroes. They're the protectors. They're the comforters. We are breaking that bond in society within the families by allowing this entity to go on in this and play God.
Well, they do it on purpose. That's the first thing they do, I think, is that they try to destroy that faith and that sense of security that they have in their home and in their family. I mean,
yes.
Take Hal's family. Many of those children had never spent a night away from home and not been tucked into bed by their parents. Their parents had supplied for them every single need: nutrition, put a roof over them, spiritual needs. They had devotions twice a day. Everything those children needed. And then one night, or one afternoon actually, about 4:30, 30 people roll up onto their house, including a SWAT team, stay in their house for about 5 hours, and then I think it was 20 degrees on a November night at 9:30. They put coats on them and take them out to a cop car and take them away from their home. They had no idea when they were coming back. They had no idea where they were going, who they would be staying with. Okay. Now,
John, can you show that picture again? We showed the picture earlier of the children being taken, being placed into the police automobile. I don't know if he can again, but we did show it earlier, folks. If you've been with us, these children, a SWAT team. Tell us a little bit about Hal.
Oh my gosh.
Tell us about his background. I mean,
seminary in New Orleans.
Go ahead.
No, he pastored 7 congregations. He's a pastor. He's been a man of God for 50 years. Very intelligent. Grows
soft.
Grows much of his own food right there on their house. I mean, he's got a greenhouse with fish tanks in it, and the fish feed the plants, and the plants feed the fish, and it's wholesome and it's pure. And I walked into that house, and I've never felt so much love in my life in any single place as in that home. And he's the kindest, gentlest man that I've ever met.
He had never been involved with Child Protective Services, didn't have any problems with the police, was a godly man and a kind man and a part of his community, an asset to the community. And you never felt more love, but yet, first visit, he went with guns drawn. Is that what you're telling us?
No. The first visit was actually a month before. And a DHS investigator came out. She's now a supervisor, like her very much.
Social worker. We're talking to social worker.
Social worker, investigator, yeah.
Same, yeah.
A very, very intelligent young lady. She came in, she looked around, she talked to everybody, and she knew there was no problem, and she left. That was a month earlier. So that call didn't work. So then came the backup and the second call. And then the allegations got to be more and more fantastic, I guess you could say. An average person would know better than to believe these allegations. But instead, they mounted an armed response team, and about 31 officers and agents of the government rolled up on Hal's house. And the reason they were there for nearly 5 hours is because they didn't find anything, But as one of the senators in the Joint Professional Review Committee said, when you bring that type and that much force, somebody's going down. So they knew they better justify it. So even though they couldn't find any,
they had to cover their own bucks.
They sure did. So even though they couldn't find any evidence, maybe in the back of their mind they thought old slick, sneaky Hal, was just pulling the wool over their eyes, and eventually they'd find it. And in fact, even the sheriff said some days later, there's likely to be criminal charges come out of this. So no, they went down. DHS was not going to take the children even on the second call. They said, there's nothing here. There's no problem. We're not taking hold. And it was the Garland County Sheriff, Sergeant Wright, who procured the search warrant. And that's a very unique case. You almost never have a search warrant in a case like this, but they did. So Sergeant Wright said, I'm taking hold of these children. DHS had no choice but to take hold of them. Where DHS went wrong is not returning them. And being part of the collusion when they went in front of Judge Naramore 10 days later at the probable cause hearing. Somebody should have in that 10 days stood up and said, no, we're not doing this. It's not right. There's not the evidence. Yet they didn't. They all went with the flow, to where some 4 months later, DHS is putting a contract worker in their home 20 hours a week to make sure that the children are okay. And they're telling them what books they can and can't read out of the Bible when they're doing their devotions.
Even to date right now?
No, but 4 months after they were taken, they were.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that they told them, these children that had been brought up their entire lives with their parents, they told them what they could teach religiously and what they could not within their own home?
Oh, yeah.
To their own children?
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, they said stay away from any books or any verses that mention hell or witchcraft or anything that can be determined to be derogatory toward the children. In fact, they went so far as to say let them pick the book in the Bible to study. Okay? I mean, this is absolute direct infringement on the right to practice religion.
I mean, do they know that, listen, they opened the book to teach them about hell as soon as they took them out of their home. As soon as they took them out of their home.
Mm-hmm.
Because these kids face suffering. I don't care, even if it's just the fear of sleeping in some stranger's home and not having your siblings, your mom, your dad, your favorite stuffed animal. And then let's not talk about the abuse that so many foster parents, and I'm not saying all, there's great foster parents, and there's bad, thieving, abusive, lying, murderous foster parents also.
Mm-hmm.
So.
We'll never know what happened to the children when they were in foster care. Joseph told Hal, he said, they took my pants, and cried about it and was upset.
They took his pants?
They took his pants. I guess it was a favorite pair of pants. And, they might have been ratty, old, holy pants, but they were his pants. And when you take a child away from their home, to then take what may be the only familiar thing that they have, that is a connection to them and their comfort and their security.
Absolutely.
He was very upset. And this was recently. They took my pants, Dad, he said. So we don't know the trauma.
No, absolutely.
Experience from this.
I know that the research shows one day away from your family can affect you through a lifespan. A lifespan.
Yeah.
That's the reality. That kind of trauma doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Jessica, are you still with us, dear?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I'm thankful for your patience. Jessica, when is your next court hearing?
November 29th and 30th.
November 29th and 30th.
Yes.
You're being accused of what?
Assault, first degree on a family member. It's a Class Y felony, 10 to 40 to life. Her criminal attorney is a friend of mine I went to school with, Reggie Koch. And we're working toward that day. So don't really want to say anything else.
Got you, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about can we ask the public to give her some support at the courthouse when her hearing begins?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
And it won't be a hearing. It's a 2-day jury trial. So it will
this is a full-out trial.
Yeah, that's it.
Let me ask you something. Jessica, do you have a Facebook page or do you have a blog somewhere that people can support you?
I have a Facebook page, Jessica Hill.
Okay. Facebook page at Jessica Hill. Maybe, Mary, can you put it up maybe so that everybody has a link? So there might be a lot of Jessica Hills. Folks, whoever wants to support her, Jessica, do you have your story up on your Facebook page?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can start. Maybe we can start a Facebook page. Just, I don't know, Joe. What do you think?
I think at this point we want to still kind of keep it a little bit close to the vest until we get through that trial.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
Like I said, I probably have said too much now. The only thing is that we're not worried about DHS again at this point. The case is closed as far as that goes. So the retribution, we're not worried about unless they come and try to do another case. And there's always that danger as well that they would come back and open another investigation or another case. However,
Yeah, I think that this is going to become very high profile, and if they did that, gosh, there'd be a lot of eyes, not like the first time. There would be a lot
Correct.
of eyes. November 29th.
I'll say this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do not believe the case would have ended in DHS when or the way that it ended had Representative Mickey Gates not been there to observe. And that's just my opinion, and y'all are entitled to it, as a friend of mine likes to say.
Jessica,
and I was accused by that judge of attempting to intimidate by not only Representative Gates being present at another hearing a few weeks earlier, my only two with this particular judge, Senator Alan Clark observed. I was not able to be there because they refused to continue the case because I had a conflict. And Alan Clark observed that proceeding, and that one was also dismissed. And that just never happens. So,
right, it doesn't happen. So what you're saying is the judge considered it intimidating when legislators, senators, assembly members, people of holding a political position went to observe something in which they are part of making determinations.
Right. Well, he didn't feel intimidated. He made it a point to let us know that he was not intimidated. However, he felt that I was attempting to intimidate him.
You were attempting to by inviting people who in fact helped to make these laws, and what better opportunity for them to see how things are going so that they can implement the right strategy.
He went so far as to say there is no statutory authority that requires me to open my courtroom to a legislator or any other member of the government. In fact, because as we know, the proceedings are closed and the records are sealed.
This is a hidden agenda here, and with no
children.
Accountability. Yes,
right.
But the children,
of course.
Yeah.
Right. So, I guess they weren't thinking about the fact that courtroom, on average, in Arkansas, each one costs about $1 million a year to run. Juvenile courts cost much more, actually. And that legislator is responsible for appropriating and doling that money out. That legislator is also responsible for writing the laws that judge is required to follow. Yet he does not have a right to be in there. So I think that'll probably be fixed in this legislative session. I'm sure there will be some statutory authority that does allow a representative or senator to be in any court of the state of that I anticipate to happen. It's clear that he didn't do that.
Absolutely. But he did allow him in.
He did.
But did he ever kick him out at the beginning?
No, but he waited a while before he let him in. I think. I'm not sure why, but yeah, he did.
Everything that I'm hearing, these particular members of the government are very upright. They are. Yeah. They're doing. They're taking very seriously the position in which they have been elected. And you do have elected officials. Is it an election in?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. These are representatives of the House of Representatives and senators of the state Senate, all of which are elected. The judges here are also elected. But it's not just that they're upright and taking their duty seriously. The members that are on this particular committee accepted the duty, really, to investigate the actions of the state police and the Department of Human Services. They've gone above and beyond their duty as far as what they have, the depth that they've gone into, the specificity of what they want to know. Their constituents are calling all over the state with horror stories. This committee has invited parents to come tell their stories.
This is what every state has to do.
Yeah, with what every state should be doing. That's where I met Jessica. She was present at every single Joint Professional Review Committee hearing where either I was testifying or my clients were testifying or members of these agencies were testifying. She was at every single one. And that's where she came up to me and said, I need help. And I mean, at that point, really, I was over pro bono at that point, and I didn't want to, but she would not take no for an answer, and I am so glad that she broke me down. And
Wow.
She's been to everyone since, and she's
Really?
supportive. She knows firsthand, absolutely, and I think she'll be at everyone from here on out too.
Wow, Jessica, you didn't stop, honey, huh? You were determined. These are your children.
Yeah.
These are your children. Wow.
Yeah. And that in and of itself is evidence to these people that they should know. A woman that's going to harm her child is not going to go to the lengths that she's gone to exonerate herself and get those babies back home with her. It's just common sense. And that's exactly what these agencies lack, is common sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up. You know what? I want to pull up that link. Mary, can you find that link? It's on my Facebook page. You went before the committee. What committee was it, Joe, that you were before?
That's the committee we're talking about, the Joint Professional Review Committee.
Okay, and the Joint Professional Review Committee. Okay.
Right. It's their job to review the performance of agencies. And it just so happened that, when Senator Clark went to Cecile Blucher and went to Major Staten and said, y'all have this case absolutely wrong. You need to figure out where you're going wrong and fix it. They told him to go jump in the lake. It just so happened he co-chaired this. And he said, well, it's our job to review state agencies. We're going to start with these two. And they have.
Boy, oh boy. Is he the gentleman that said, you lack common sense? You just reminded me. I mean, that common sense, is there not any common sense, he said. Is that him?
Right. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen that, but he's the co-chair. And right.
Incredible.
Okay. And Senator Clark, he gives an opening statement generally. If you're interested in that, go back and watch those YouTubes and the
this is we're going to post them, actually, folks. We're going to post them on Health Impact News, and I'm going to post them on my personal page. And Joe, I don't know if you are connected with people on your personal page. Do you have a law office page? If you don't, maybe you should make one.
It's just my personal page for now.
Okay. These videos, folks, I watched them all. Joe, I saw you. You were amazing. And the woman's name, McGee. Miss McGee. I mean, she tried everything to circumvent, and then continuously she hid behind, well, I wish I could talk about this, because I would love to talk about this. No, ma'am. I want to say right now, Miss McGee, if you are watching this show, you probably will be sent this show to watch, because that's usually the way it goes when my shows run and specify a certain state. You were quite obvious to me, madam, and I don't know you. And perhaps, you should rethink your career. I don't know if you're a mother, but I'm ashamed if you are, that you would take such a stand. Woman to woman, I am ashamed if you are.
Miss McGee worked for the department for about 25 years. It's my understanding that she is retiring and going to Louisiana now.
Oh, my God.
Cecile Blucher was the director of DCFS. Since these hearings have started, she's resigned. John Seelig was the director of the Department of Human Services. He resigned also back in March. There's been a turnover of directors within the department in almost every important part. So changes are coming, but I believe Miss McGee is retiring now. So whether you'll get to see her or not, I don't know anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I just got message. I haven't even looked at the time because I love your direction, Attorney Joe Churchwell, Arkansas, folks. He is fighting the good fight. Joe, do you have a professional, not personal, but professional email?
Churchwell.law@gmail.
Okay, Churchwell.
Is the best.
Okay, Churchwell, CHURCHWELL.
.law@gmail.com.
.law, LAW, @gmail.com. We are out of time. We were out of time a while ago. Thank you, UBN Radio, for caring about these issues. Folks, please, please, please take part in this. Be a voice for a child. Don't be silent. Don't think it won't happen to you. Your number will come up eventually. The black, the brown, the yellow, the down, and now, recently, the wealthy. There is no discrimination with the department. Joe, I honor you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do, and I'm so glad to have met you. We're going to do some good stuff.
We certainly are, and thank you for what you do. Folks, National Safe Child Show, we thank you for joining us, and go to our website, www.nationalsafechild.com. It is being updated. We love you. God bless you. Keep your kids safe. Don't let the department in if they come to your door. Do not exercise your civil rights, folks, and don't be afraid to do it. Otherwise,
Thank you
will
for
be
listening
fighting
to the
like
National
Jessica.
Safe Child Show.
Jessica, are you
UBN
still
Radio.
on with us?
For past episodes,
Ma'am.
visit the archives
Jessica,
on ubnradio.com.
honey, I would love
and for
after
more
your
information,
case
go
on
to
November 29th and the 30th to have a
nationalsafechildcoalition.com.
show just with